Welcome to Future Ready Live. I'm your host, Tom Hood, and this is where we talk about topics that CFOs, CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations prepare for change and transformation. Today, we're going to be talking about CFOs as value creators and sharing insights from the recent CFO Leadership Council Conference that we sponsored, and the president of that group, Jack McCullough, is with us today. He's the founder of the CFO Leadership Council, a global organization dedicated to empowering the world's senior financial executives. He's a chair for the MIT Sloan CFO Summit and the visionary behind CFO Week. Author for Forbes, and actually has his second book out. First one was Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, and the next one is the Psychopathic CEO. So with that, Jack, say hi to everybody.
Tom, great to be here. It's been a little too long. I've been looking forward to hooking up with you again.
I know, and it was awesome being at your conference. I loved it. A lot of really good stuff going on, and we're going to talk more about that. But I want to start with your big news. Tell us about your recent sale to the CEO group.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about it. And, to be candid, I wasn't particularly looking to sell the company. I'm having a lot of fun running it on a day-to-day basis, so I wasn't looking for it. But when the chief executive group reached out to me and, they sort of started telling me a little bit about what they were all about. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. In fact, a bit of a funny story. They first time they reached out to me, a fellow named Wayne Cooper, he's the chairman. He said, hey, I'd like to explore some partnership opportunities. So I sent an email to my executive assistant and said, can you make this guy go away for a while? I was just kind of busy. Turned out he was persistent, and that was a great thing from my perspective, to say the least. But when I learned about the company and all of the things that they've done, and they have an amazing group for chief executives and boards of directors, and they're sort of looking to expand across the C-suite. And it just seemed like we could really help them with some of our knowledge of CFOs and our branding, and they could certainly help us as well. So yeah. I viewed it as sort of that rare quadruple win. It was a win for me, it was a win for them, it was a win for my employees, and it was a win for our members.
Yeah.
And the more I looked into it, and it was just, I'm an auditor by background, so I'm always looking for reasons to say no. And gosh, I couldn't come up with very many, and certainly no good ones. So, took a little while. We started talking in March, and we finally closed on August 1st.
That's very exciting. And I have to say, the way when I heard you announce it, it made sense, because we talk about the CFO being the co-pilot to a business, right there sitting next to the CEO, especially through this pandemic. So this seems like a natural fit. And like you said, that win-win, in your case, quadruple, that's pretty cool. So congratulations.
Thanks. I'm going to have to get a quadruple win trademark or something.
That's true. That is true. I think that works. That does work. And now it's funny, because we did that with our Business Learning Institute. So you and I both now have bosses for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I mentioned that. It's like, let me run this by Wayne and Marshall. It's like, oh no, what have I done? I have to ask permission. So, but they're, we're a very similar mindset. Jokes aside, not that we're going to agree on everything, but they totally love what we're doing here and are very supportive of what we're doing. So,
well, all the best for a fruitful merger that you've got going on, and hopefully we'll still be working with you in the future.
I'm certain that we will be.
So. Awesome. All right, so now let's get to the conference, because I thought it was an amazing conference.
Thanks.
What were some of the biggest insights that you got out of the like for you personally, as you look, like what did you learn?
Yeah, I liked the conference quite a bit, and I think I really can't wait to go back to a live conference. And by the way, you and I have known each other a while now, but we haven't met.
I know.
And so we're going to fix that in May of 2022.
All right.
But the one advantage to a virtual conference is you can get a lot of great speakers who might not want to fly to Boston to speak for an hour. So, we had really a global talent pool to pick from, and we had some phenomenal speakers. But I guess what I was struck by is, even though it wasn't specifically a soft skills conference, that came up over and over again. It was a lot of team building and communications and leadership and strategy. Even Sarah Spoya, who's the CFO of Tipalti, which is an automation company, very cutting edge stuff, Silicon Valley darling, unicorn status. She talked almost exclusively about the team. And, yeah, the tech is there, but, without the right team behind you, it doesn't matter how good the tech is.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see, even in 2021, that, with great technology, it's still, as James Carville might have put it, it's the people, stupid.
It's funny because that's what we've obviously been researching that and talking about that a lot. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, a futurist named Mike Walsh. He says, if you automate, you must elevate the skills of your team. And to your point, soft skills, we call them success skills. But yeah, it's all those skills, right? The collaboration, teamwork, being a visionary, inspiring people, all those kind of things, as opposed to the hard technical skills. So interesting.
Yeah. And, it's soft skills isn't the right term. I like yours better because, I'm a classic numbers guy, CPA, MBA, finance, CFO for a lot of my career. And the soft skills are actually, for me at least, very difficult. I've worked hard to become, pretty good at them, but the quantitative stuff I didn't really have to work hard to be good at.
Right.
So
right.
It just kind of came to me. So.
Yeah, which is, I think, true of most of our profession, right? We come from that disciplined numbers background, and sometimes the soft is hard, right? So
yeah, but the great, controllers you can probably get to a controller level with just really good quant skills. But if you want to get to that CFO and executive type level, you really need to focus on, the soft skills. And even thing you don't think of CFOs as having a high emotional IQ,
right?
But every CFO I know does. So
yes,
at least the good ones. So
part of the formula. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. So another major theme that I heard was this idea of us moving from stewards to value creators. Talk a little bit about what you heard around that, or what you think about that topic.
Yeah, and I think from our conversations, Tom, we both thought it was trending in that direction anyway for the last few years. But I think the pandemic and some of the other battles that we've been fighting, sort of put that on steroids.
Yeah.
And it's really happening right now, whereas what was sort of the future CFO of 2017, 2018 is the present CFO of 2021 and 22. It's no longer sort of the corporate historian.
Right.
And again, it hasn't necessarily been that way for a while. It just wasn't happening as quickly as it probably did because of 2020 and 21. Because, I tell people, and it's not false modesty, it's just the reality. I was a CFO in the 2000s, and me and the people who were CFOs at that time would have been on the sidelines during a pandemic. And that's, it's no knock on them. It's not that we were dumber than the current generation of CFOs, but that's how we were trained. We reported things after they happened. Right. But these CFOs are making it happen. They are creating value. I like to say to people, don't report history, make history. And that's what the current CFO does.
Yeah. And I think, if you think about it, we were on the front lines of the financial crisis throughout this whole pandemic, which doesn't seem like it's ever going to even end, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, we were planning live events, and in June, the entire community was really pumped. It really felt like by September, enough of us would have been vaccinated, would have herd immunity. So even those who weren't, would feel safe coming to a live event. And gosh, it hasn't been an encouraging summer at all. But there are bigger challenges, obviously, than whether or not the CFO Leadership Council has live events. But it's what I do for a living, so it is something that is important to me.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I think, interesting enough, we had our big Engage conference in July at the area in Vegas. About, I'm going to say, almost 50% came live, which surprised us. And we probably had a couple thousand people there for 4 or 5 days. It was that was right when things were kind of opened up, if you will, for that. It actually, by that Friday, Vegas started to put mask mandates back in because of the variant was moving. But it was a feeling of just being able to shake hands and see people. That was incredible. I mean, people definitely are longing for that. So I can't wait for May, hopefully back to Boston, if that's where you're going to have it, to catch up.
Yeah, it's it's May 19th and 20th. We're doing CFO week again this year. So Sloan is doing its accelerator the 16th, 17th, and 18th, and ours is the 19th and 20th. And hopefully it'll be a combination of in person and virtual. So,
Yep.
but yeah,
Awesome.
because I mean, our community, we're a bunch of huggers. I mean, it's again, you don't think of CFOs that way, but they just really, there's just a lot of genuine friendships that have been formed over the years.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. All right, so I mean, I know a bunch of the conference, you talked a little bit about it earlier, the interplay of automation and finance and how that's moving, this whole digital transformation thing. What's your take on that? Is it accelerating? How fast? Like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's the pace. You can't really keep up with it right now. Because I think what was happening is CFOs were kind of aware they needed to make these investments. Procrastinating is not the right word for it, but I'm struggling to come up with a better one. It was just a matter of priorities, but all of a sudden they realized, one thing we've learned from, economic disasters in the past, the companies that innovate and spend money are the ones that survive and dominate when things return to a healthy economic thing.
Yeah.
The ones that roll up into a fetal ball, not so much.
Yeah.
And you think about it, with the right digitalization strategy, you can, not only reduce cost and create operational efficiencies, you can empower your team. You can get them, they're working virtually, but the right technology can really get them to be a lot more collaborative. And it can give your organization a long-term competitive advantage over the competition. Yeah. There's nowhere that I know of, and I think I know, where you can invest and get that kind of outcome. So it's largely, the technology's there, but it's largely CFO driven, just to sort of their role in rebuilding the company. So
yeah, and it's actually beyond just a cost basis, right? It's not about just efficiency. It's literally about systems that will help create value, right? New point of sale systems, new customer information systems, right? All those things are now part of the finance remit, aren't they, in this new world?
Absolutely. Value and growth and things like that. And yeah, if you're talking about some of the old school functions, CFOs are just, kind of focused on different things.
Yeah.
Now, there still is an F in CFO. So it's not like finance won't always be part of that role, but it is a little bit, just the definition of it is a little bit different. Well, and in fact, I met a guy, he argued with me that CFOs should be called chief information officers.
Ooh.
Because and I sort of knew he was wrong, but I didn't win the argument either. I mean, he made a good point, right? I mean, I wouldn't have put it in those terms, but yeah, I mean, they're largely providing a lot of great information to empower, the rest of the company. So
True. Yeah. I'm not sure that our IT brethren would appreciate that, but oftentimes they report to the CFO. We're seeing, right? Lots of companies. So
either they report or it's a partnership, arm in arm. So.
Yep. All right. Now, another one. During my presentation, I asked a poll about top issues facing finance teams. So the top two that they identified was the role stretch, the notion of I got to help pilot the plane at the same time I'm making sure I'm a good steward and the numbers are right. And the second one was we lack the necessary skills in the finance team, which I think circles all the way back to where we started, right? This whole idea of soft skills. What do you think about that? What can we do to accelerate finance folks in these couple of key areas?
Yeah, it's interesting because Barry from your organization quoted me a statistic when we spoke before. And I remember responding saying, hey, you've got an email. You've got a typo in this. Because it was like 89% of CFOs said they weren't digitally ready.
Yeah.
He was like, no, that's the actual number. I'm like, it can't be, but it was. And, it's still going to be the biggest challenge they face. But to me, it is largely about empowering the team, getting back to Sarah Spoya's point about technology is no good unless the team is well versed in it. So some challenges, absolutely. But, a couple of things that is a saving grace. One, the technology is light years ahead of even what it was 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then also we have the most highly educated workforce in the history of the world. And by the way, as Generation Z enters the workforce, more and more, I mean, that's the generation that, they grew up on the iPads and other technologies that seemed like science fiction in our childhood. Because
Yeah.
you and I are almost 30 now. So, we're getting up there.
Yes.
So you've got some advantages, but there's tremendous pressure on finance chiefs these days, right? It's like, make better decisions, make them more quickly.
Right.
And I don't know what an acceptable batting average used to be, but whatever that number is, it's not good enough anymore.
Right.
You've got to make decisions rapidly, and you have to be right a lot of the times. And luckily, we've got great people to help make those decisions and great technologies to do the analysis. So
yeah, it's there's no doubt. And the other one, and this might be where your new venture with the chief executive group helps, because we hear from not a small group but many CFOs that they don't have the support at the budget level from the CEO. In other words, they still oftentimes look at finance as a cost center as opposed to that value creating. Any tips or ideas about how that CFO can crack that to get full support of that CEO when they're thinking about doing this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting because a CEO who thinks that, there are some who are just unchangeable, right? CFOs are bean counters, and if you're a CFO, that just means you're the best of the bean counters. And I know economic necessity. If you work with someone like that, I don't want to be flippant and say stop working for that person. But if the person is unmovable, it's the battle of heart and minds. If it's the difference between being unmovable and skeptical, right?
Right.
Prove it to not only to the CEO, the value that you can bring, but to the entire executive team, to the board of directors, because you're out on the front lines now. You have the opportunity not just to report the strategy, but to actually build the strategy and to rethink entire new business models. And, the other thing is, unless you're that 1 in 100 company where the CEO is a former CFO, you're likely the only financial expert on the leadership team.
Right.
And, that's never been more valuable than it is now. It used to just be sales and marketing, but right now, finance has sort of made itself the equal pillar.
Yep. And I think you're right. And through the pandemic, I'd say if there's ever been a time to really push that agenda, this is it, right? If you've been helpful in guiding the business, navigating through this pandemic, now's the time to say, all right, see how we did this? Now we've got to up our game so we can keep doing it and stave off competition that might be now starting to move faster than they used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the competition's out there. And, it's interesting because competition isn't necessarily what I really think of when I talk to CFOs. Like I spoke late last week, I spoke to some CFOs on life sciences companies and drug discovery, completely different things, whatnot. So I'm like, well, they're not competition. They said, well, we are. I'm like, explain that to me. We can't hire scientists fast enough, and we're competing for the same technical talent.
Interesting.
So when you think about it, almost everybody's your competition, right?
Yeah.
Even if they completely different product, but if you're looking for engineering talent, or, if you're still one of those old school companies that actually build stuff, there are only so many people out there that know how to do that. So, whether you might be making blenders or cars, you don't think of them as competitive.
Yeah.
But in the talent wars, you maybe are competitive. So,
yeah. All right, real quick, speaking of the talent wars, this whole great resignation, we've been watching surveys now with our CFO community, and talent went from, kind of a priority to, in the last 30 days, top priority. So people are feeling the great resignation. Any tips on retention and recruiting for CFOs?
Yeah, if you're religious, I'd say pray. That would be a really good tip, because this is... it's been tough for a few years to not only to get great people, but to keep them. But I think it's time, think about the culture, set yourself apart a little bit, right? It can't be me too. If the people that want to join your workforce, if they all want to work from home, find a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
If on the other hand, if you're trying to recruit people who want mentors, find a way to make that happen too. But just find a way to distinguish yourself, because the same old isn't going to work. Because there are a lot of really clever people out there, chasing the exact same talent as you. And you can't just think that, what worked in 2019 is going to work anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be easy. We had a foosball table, and foosball tables and beer on Fridays. What more do you need to get cool people to come work for you? But
yeah,
it's a little different now. But I even remember when my niece graduated from college, she told me she was looking for a dog-friendly company, and she turned down a good job offer because it wasn't dog-friendly. And I was like, my mother and father would have kicked my butt if I ever told them that, right? But Gen Z, they're very mission focused. They know what they want out of a career and out of their lives, and all the respect in the world for them.
So it's funny because one of the things I've heard, and we've worked with a couple of corporate finance groups, it's easy to try to mirror all the hot trends that are going on. Mm-hmm. Instead, just ask them, say, what would make this a killer culture and get you at your best, highest performing level, right? It's an and, right? So we got to meet our job needs for the company and do what we do. But what would make it a killer culture? And then do that, right? You don't have to start copying everybody else. So I think that would be the way I'd say to think about that. All right, let's close with a great one, because I hear you finally got your book published, The Psychopathic CEO. Is that right?
Yes, that's the book. It was published as of Sunday. It is officially available. I did the self-publishing thing through Amazon. So it is officially available on Amazon and nowhere else at this point. But, I'm really pleased with how it came out. I was inspired to write it because a lot of my members over the years have just mentioned to me some of the difficulties they've had with their boss, and I could relate to it. And a few years ago, I saw a seminar put on by an FBI agent about psychopathic CEOs. And before that, I kind of thought, I had worked for somebody that I just thought wasn't very nice. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, this guy, I won't say who he is for fear of being sued because he's still in the workforce. But I'm like, boy, he checks an awful lot of the boxes. And talking to other CFOs, I wasn't alone, which was sort of good and bad, right? It's like, great, I'm not alone. It's like, oh my God, they're out there. So it turns out about 15% of American CEOs are psychopaths.
Wow.
And, which means, so if you're like the typical American and you have, 12 jobs in your career, the odds of at least one of those 12 CEOs being a psychopath, it's, almost 100, it's like 97%.
Wow.
So all of us will. And I thought there's no book that's written to help CFOs identify a potential psychopath, and more importantly, what to do about it. So, and it's not a medical book. I don't, I don't feel like I'm qualified to make a diagnosis. But, if you're working with people with these personality disorders, I think the book can help you.
All right. How about one tip without giving away the whole book? What would be one tip for a CFO to deal with a psychopathic CEO?
Yeah, I mean, the main tip I give to people is to, to really consider leaving, because these are people without conscience. And, as a CFO, if this person, does something untoward, it ruins your reputation in the process. Right. But let's assume you can't or whatever. Find a way to make it work. Like there are some, as it turns out, some great CEOs are thought to be psychopaths. In fact, not that she was a great CEO, but Elizabeth Holmes, her trial is actually starting today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she was the CEO of Thanos, for don't know, the blood lab kit, and she faked the results. But Steve Jobs, a lot of people thought he was a psychopath, but with the right people around him, he was a transformative CEO.
Yeah.
He changed how Americans live more than any business executive of our lifetime, I think it's fair to say, right?
Yep, that's probably true.
So if you can focus on the good aspects of him, which is that he can focus, he can solve problems, he's creative, while, helping him keep out of trouble and minimizing some of the troubling behavior, then you've got something. So, think about whether or not it, the risk reward factor. And, you might be working for the next Steve Jobs. People have said Elon Musk is a psychopath, and he's not, as best I can tell. But, he checks a few of the boxes.
Yeah.
I'd work for Elon Musk for a year. I mean, you'd learn more from Mr. Musk than you would getting an MBA at an elite school, I would think. Yes.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to read that. And so, Jack, with that, I want to say everybody can get a copy of the book, Secrets of the Rockstar CFOs, at rockstarcfos.com, and The Psychopathic CEO on Amazon. You can still go to their website, cfoleadershipcouncil.com, or follow Jack on Twitter at Jack_McCullough. That's McCullough. And Jack, as always, thanks for joining me. We'll be back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. See you then. Thank you.